Yahweh skena, nayuensi negahi, skena, akeyatonya, skoyakek, angwe howe hodenoshoni, wiku yohis ananya, umas tuat toni da ungra, ake gwewe hatuya, uhu wanahani, hotai nangruyank, jagago wane, odaje uyanre, soa asona ganashagawa, iawe, ukeanaso, onagit wahi isu tinakwa. Welcome to my life. In this world, I'm known as Marcine Quinzer. I am first and foremost an artist, but an author and storyteller out of necessity. No one understood my paintings, so I found I had to tell them about the wonderful stories they represented. And that is how I came to put these stories in a book, Spirit Winds of Peace, the Epic of the Peacemakers, along with all my inspired paintings, and why I now have these DVDs of the storytelling. These are fabulous formats to be able to share my enthusiasm for these stories. And in the process of sharing, I found I was a teacher, educating others in what I myself had learned. These stories are not mine. They are the stories of the Haudenosaunee, or as you might know them, the Iroquois. Only the interpretation is mine, and I must stress only mine, and in no way represents traditional teachings. I was privileged to be on the inside of learning these teachings, but I try to represent them as what other cultures can learn from them, not as the Iroquois themselves would teach them. So with that said, let's continue. I met Jackie Michael King December 3rd, 1988 at the Christmas show. I had set up my Mountain Man art and was sharing the booth with a Scotsman, George Wallace. Wally was a fine craftsman, and he had a lot of his beadwork for sale when this tall Indian with coal black hair, white shirt with blue pinstripes, starched Levi's, and cowboy boots came over to talk to Wally about his beadwork. He soon came over to look at my art, and then he left. But oh my gosh, was my heart pounding. Before long he was back, and the conversation went something like this. You sure are a great artist, but you do lousy subject matter. Me. And what should I be doing? Him. Indian art. Me. But I don't know anything about Indians, and I don't want to represent them wrong. Him. Don't worry about that. I will teach you. And that began the love of my life. We were married that summer, May 29th, 1989. It turned out that Jack had been trained as firekeeper and ceremonial leader for the Seneca Cayuga of Oklahoma by Watson Whitewing, who was Wyandotte, and by Bob, Dutch, and Ruby White, who were Seneca. He spent time after green corn at the ceremony grounds with them, learning all that he could, sometimes staying till the snow flew. Jack explained to me that the Seneca Cayuga had been there since 1930s. The U.S. government had required the Indian peoples to go to reservations. 14 were set aside for the Iroquois, but several things were going on in the northern country. One was the missionary work of the Christians, and the second was the Haudenosaunee had a new prophet named Handsome Lake. The people were not happy about the changes he was making in the old ways, and so when the government offered new homes in Oklahoma, these families took the opportunities that they were given to them. They left the northern regions and came to Oklahoma, where they could continue the old ways of the peacemaker. So Jack was the best possible source for me to have learned these stories from. From the first time he mentioned Hiawatha, I was hooked. I was adopted Seneca Cayuga in 1993 at the Green Corn. Hubert Skye from Six Nations was officiating. Every time Hubert would see me after that, he would take my face in his hands and kiss my forehead. I hoped that the work I have done would please him. I was adopted by the Amanda Bearskin Greenback family. I was adopted sister to Susie Lord, daughter of Rosie Lord, daughter of Amanda Bearskin Greenback, daughter of Rosie Fox, daughter of Amanda Whitewing, Seneca Dare Clan. Grandma Mandy was the eldest, so she kept the tribe's enrollments. She also held a time-honored position as keeper of the visitors' lodge at ceremonies. This was an ancient custom held by the first Yegowane Jigunsase, and like this great peace woman, Grandma Mandy would make sure there was always food on the fire so that visitors could eat and find shelter if they desired to spend the night. On Visitors' Night of Greencorn, when everyone in the community and nearby reservations were invited to come to Greencorn for the food, the dancing, and the festivities, Grandma Mandy would make donuts cooked in oil on the campfire. That was a big treat. Jack and I renovated an old supper club in Wyandotte, Oklahoma, into Indian Territory Culture Center for the preservation of the culture. Jack said at one time when he was a kid they would dance all night long and never repeat a song. In his absence, these songs had been reduced to what was called the top 10. They would sing them and then they'd start all over. So Jack started teaching all the songs and dances he could remember. Jack also taught the powwow dances, and we helped many to make their regalia and introduced them to the dance circle. We had a youth drum group mentored by Sonny Waters, which began to win many competitions. And we had an Iroquois social dance group that went to the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. It was shortly after we completed the renovation and had opened up as Painted Horse Native Museum that the ceremonial spokesperson, Richard White, paid us a visit. He brought us a carved stick that he said no one remembered what it was, and that it was being used as a pointer in the peach seed game at Greencorn. He said since we had opened as a museum that maybe we should have it. Maybe we would find out what it was. Not long after that, we got a visit from Jake Thomas, last condoled hereditary chief of 6 Nations. Jake was on a quest to find those who would like to come to Canada to learn what he was offering. He was opening the Jake Thomas Learning Center at 6 Nations. We showed him our stick, and he gave us a 2-hour dissertation on the condolence cane. Our cane was at least, maybe, around 150 years old, perhaps brought down with the nation when they came from the north. Jake was the last to know all the ceremonies in all 6 languages of the Haudenosaunee, and he was meticulously recording everything he knew. As a historian, he was required to keep everything as he received it and did not change it one iota. When Jake and his beautiful wife Yvonne left, they gave me several books of stories that Jake had compiled, and reading them only served to ignite my desire to know more, and I became a pain in Jack's side, wanting to know and absorb all he could tell me. These stories became an obsession for me, and the pictures they emitted in my head demanded that I paint them and put them down to share. And so as I did, they were added to the building that we used as a culture center and museum. In 2003, Chief Bearskin and the Wyandotte Council made me Associate Master Artist for the Wyandotte Nation of Oklahoma. It was an honor never really expected, but for 10 years we had taught the youth of all First Nations in the area, as well as anyone who wanted to know more about their culture, and we had helped many get ready for the powwow. By that time, I had 15 paintings done and had taken them to the Winter Olympics under the direction of ceremonial leader Richard White. So essentially, they honored me for the work I'd done in teaching the First Nations youth alongside Jack, and for the work I had done in honoring the Peacemaker. believe I first recognized my talent as an artist back when I was 4 years old. My daddy set me down with a pencil and a piece of paper and helped me to draw this photograph that was on the wall of our dining room. And from there, I was constantly drawing. Even as I went through all my different grade levels at school, my teachers were always there encouraging my art ability and helping me to develop it. I took a couple of semesters at Boise State Junior College. That was a few years ago. And studied with John Kilmaster there. I also did some studying with Willis Nelson. But the rest of it is self-taught. I've developed my own style and particularly my interest. About 15 years ago, I met a gentleman named Kenneth Epoch. He's an Oneida elder, and it was under his tutelage that I began to learn about the Native American ways. And I learned a tremendous number of stories and so forth that we later put into a museum and a culture center in Wyandotte. There we lived among 8 different nations there in the northeast corner of Oklahoma. Among them were the Seneca Cayuga. And it was originally from Kenneth Epoch that I learned about the great laws and all of the stories that I began to become obsessed with and to learn about that are now part of the Spirit Winds of Peace exhibit and tour that we're doing at this time. My interpretation of the Great Laws was first exhibited with the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. There I was part of the ethnic village, and it was the part of the Indian display that was there at that time, telling the story of the Great Laws. All of my paintings were on exhibit there also. That was the result of a grant that was given to me so that I was able to do that. I believe the intention of the Spirit Winds of Peace exhibit is to bring people to the realization that it only takes a few people to make a difference. In the story of the Great Law, 3 individuals take warlike nations that were constantly fighting and create a civilization of peace that lasted for thousands of years. A civilization that had no poor, had no orphans, and had no jails. I think that's an inspiring story, and that's what my hope is, that people will be inspired from it. The obsession that I have, the compelling factors that I have that inspired me to create this series of paintings is everything that the Great Law encompasses. It encompasses world peace. It encompasses equality. It encompasses spirituality, a way for individuals to treat one another. The Peacemakers told us that the word that he brought was that all men should live together in peace and to love one another. I think that is an awesome statement, and it is a statement that should guide our lives, not just once a week, but every minute that we're breathing. I do believe that especially the Great Law series, because it comes from a sacred land, a sacred time, from a sacred peacemaker, that following this path gives me a direction and a focus that will only continue to enhance my spirituality personally, as well as those that I'm able to share these stories with. Thank you for taking the time to view this short presentation. I encourage you to read the story and to view my artwork, which is on this CD. It is an epic story of eminent importance to the time of now. It is a story that's very close to my heart, and it is a story that I believe needs to be shared. We have designed it as a traveling exhibit, and now is a great time for you to bring this story and this exhibit to your area.
My contact information is also available on this CD. I am looking forward to meeting you and to presenting this story with my beautiful artwork in your area soon.
As Jake Thomas was the historian at Six Nations, and his visit had ignited a passion for this path, he was bound to keep the stories as they were given to him. However, in my quest, I found stories from each nation similar and different. It seemed as though as time had passed, as though some had left this part of the story in and others had lost part. So I have combined traditions to get a more complete story. As a storyteller and not a historian, that is my purpose, to keep as many of these stories alive that I can. So all these fabulous stories and the 40 paintings I eventually created were put into this book, Spirit Winds of Peace, the Epic of the Peacemakers. However, in this package are 3 discs of live storytelling. I hope that you enjoy them.